everyone. John Chow here from johnchow.com, and right now I'm here at the Eureka building. Eureka building here in Irvine, California, here for the Orange County Bitcoin meetup. As you can see, it's just getting started. We're expecting a big turnout. You can tell by the chairs to the left and to the right of me, because tonight we have a very special guest. We're going to be talking to the founder and CEO of Samourai Wallet. Yeah, Samourai Wallet, one of the premier cryptocurrency wallets that you can get. Yeah. Looking forward to it. But before we begin, pizza and garlic bread. Yeah.
All right. Apologies for the slight delay. So I know that you cannot see the room, but here in Orange County in Southern California, we've got probably about 30 people, a pretty good crowd for this, and we're recording this and we'll be posting it to YouTube probably later this week.
Awesome.
Thank you, first of all, for joining us. This is a bit of a different format. Typically, it's a human being up here on this stage that I'm on with a microphone or next to me with a microphone. And today I'm kind of talking to a computer with a Samourai logo on it. But I wanted to, I've been excited about the opportunity to do this meetup and to talk to you for a long time. You and Samourai Wallet have been pioneering privacy in Bitcoin for years now, since 2016, I believe. And
yeah, 2015. Yeah.
2015. And figured I would introduce you for the people in the crowd who are not familiar with a line from the website that I love, which is Samourai Wallet is a group of privacy activists dedicated to creating software that Silicon Valley will never build, that VCs will never invest in, and the software that Bitcoin deserves. So I think that is a pretty cool mission, one of my favorite companies in the space, and everybody please give a warm welcome for Samourai.
Oh, I hear that. That sounds great.
Good. I'm glad
I really wish I could see, what's going on in the room. So at least you have the logo. I have the very boring Zoom.
Yeah, you're just kind of dealing with our Zoom. We're trying to preserve bandwidth as well to make sure that the audio quality stays top notch. So unfortunately, you can't see us, but
Okay, I'm gonna watch the stream afterwards.
all right, excellent. So I thought we could start off with a big announcement. So within the last 24 hours, you guys had a pretty major release of some software, and I thought that would be a good opportunity for you to talk about that, but maybe provide some context first on just what Samourai Wallet is, your line of products, and what you do.
Oh, sure. Well, Samourai Wallet, like Stephen said, was started in 2015. With one of our primary goals was the fact that the state of wallet software back then was pretty dire. Everyone, all the big players in the space was creating software. Their whole thing was really dumbing the software down, ripping out functionality, ripping out features, in some sort of ill-advised quest to onboard your grandmother into Bitcoin. Myself and my co-founder, Samourai Dev, both agreed that at that point it was way too early to onboard grandmother into Bitcoin. And all that people were doing, all of these companies were doing, was just kind of ripping out the functionality that actual Bitcoin users who are actually using the product needed. So we got kind of sick of that, and we got kind of sick of constantly complaining about it. So we just decided to do our own thing, make our own. Primarily because we needed something, and that's the ethos that we still have today. I've seen it go, but I've said it, and I've seen other people say it. When you're using Samourai Wallet, the devs are building for themselves, and you're along for the ride if you're into it, and that's very much true. And so we have since 2015, all of our software has been primarily focused on enhancing the user's privacy when it comes to on-chain activity. Because blockchain, as we all know, it's a mutable ledger. Those records are never going away and may come back to bite you in the ass, right? So we want to do everything that we can at the app level to make sure that our users have some shielding from that type of risk. So that might, very early on we created mix of peer-to-peer coin join transactions that we've innovated on. That's all come down the line through Samourai Wallet. And last night, we finally launched, after years of work on it, Whirlpool Mobile Mixing. And that's mobile coin join. As far as I know, it's the first and only implementation of coin join on mobile. So that was a huge thing for us. We celebrated, we drank. I have a headache now, but I am still very happy.
Excellent. It sounds like a well-deserved celebration. And
Yes.
I think just for context for everyone and to make sure that we're on the same page, so this is a big deal in part because this is the first time that coin joining has been possible on mobile, right? Without needing to at least pair with some kind of desktop software or server software, some other software stack running somewhere. That stuff has existed for a while, albeit in forms that maybe were difficult to use, and now it's just anyone with an Android phone can coin join and mix their coins, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a couple things. One, Whirlpool is the best coin join out there, mathematically. And this is all verifiable. You can look at it. There's zero deterministic links, zero mixing with yourself and like some other implementations. There's all these different components that make Whirlpool a phenomenal technology when it comes to coin join, but there was still an access issue. Users still, like you said, they still had to download something onto their desktop computer. They still had to go through a bunch of steps. And in fact, not only did they have to install something on their desktop computer, they actually had to have the Samourai wallet on their Android as well. So there was just a lot of hoops to jump through. So if you really wanted to do it, you could definitely do it. And it would be, once you read enough and you figured it out, be relatively easy. What this does is it just opens up access to literally everyone. All you need is the mobile app. You don't have to really understand the complexities around UTXO management, around point selection, around all the little things that can really mess you up. You don't have to think about that because Samourai Wallet's already thinking about that. It is a full-fledged wallet now with coin join. So it's not just a pure coin join application where you can't receive onto standard or non-SegWit addresses. You can do that. It's not a application that's very rigid where you can't do lots of things. It is the wallet as everyone, or at least if you're familiar with wallet, it's the wallet as everyone knows it with this additional functionality on top and ingrained in. And we still have so many updates to come. This is just the beginning. This is just the first of many iterations. So it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, no, that's great. It sounds like it's making this coin join privacy-enhancing technology that has existed for a while, but potentially been out of reach to less technical users, a lot more accessible, a lot more easy.
Precisely.
So that's pretty rad. I think in the room here, and presumably watching this later on YouTube, will be a variety of skill levels and familiarities with Bitcoin. So maybe we could just step back and, what is a coin join and why is it important? Maybe starting from, I think most people here probably know like wallets and the balance in a wallet, and maybe what the term UTXO means, but kind of from that level, like what is this coin join thing? Why does it matter?
Sure. A UTXO is an unspent transaction output. That's what that stands for. And essentially, your wallet is all it is when you have your wallet there and you see your balance. What that is a collection of UTXOs, like a keychain. And what CoinJoin is a method of combining those UTXOs with other peers who also want to combine their UTXOs in order to break the history of the past with the future of those coins, if that makes sense.
So part of the goal in this, right, would be to make it such that anyone trying to examine the blockchain and link your identity to your coins or your financial activity to your coins over time, this would intentionally make their life difficult. Is that fair to say?
Somewhat, yeah. It gets weird when you talk about identity, right? Because you have likely given up your identity to all sorts of third parties in order to even acquire Bitcoin, because very few people acquire Bitcoin without doing so. We call this KYC, right? Know your customer. And any regulated exchange, anything like that, you're going to have to prove your address and prove your identity to buy it. CoinJoin does not erase that. Right, that KYC record will exist, and I think it exists for 10 years by then. They have to hold on to it. So CoinJoin will not erase that. And that's a whole different discussion and question, and people really need to think very, very, very carefully about who they're giving their identity information to, and is it worth it, right? But if we're just talking about on-chain data, then absolutely, right? So let's use Coinbase as our big bad wolf, and you KYC'd yourself, you docked yourself for them. They know they have your passport and this information on you. You buy the Bitcoin, and you decide, I want to coin join this. I want to break the links where from my coins that I just bought today on Coinbase with my identity, and then I don't want Coinbase knowing what I've gotten up to later on with it. That's completely valid, right? Because once those coins enter Whirlpool, as soon as they have one mix on them, that's it. Coinbase has no way of knowing which UTXOs, which coins are yours. They all look the same. So in that essence, yes, you can break that link. However, Coinbase will always know that you, John Doe, bought Bitcoin, and if they're pressured by the government or the IRS or whoever, they will share that information.
That's,
So it's very important to understand the differences between like the meat space and the blockchain world, right? Like in the meat space, that record still exists, and someone could come to you, and that's like the wrench attack, right? Give me all the information, or I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think
there's
that's
still
an important distinction, is like once you're on the blockchain and talking about UTXOs and performing coin joins, yes, you can obscure your activity from that point on, but to your point, when you did that initial buy, I imagine most people sitting in this room bought Bitcoin on Cash App, Coinbase, Kraken, one of those sites. Once you give them your identity, and there's no undo for that, right? Like they know that you at least
There's no undo.
Yeah, they got this amount of Bitcoin from their business at this point in time, and you can kind of be pressured from there to divulge other information.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's right. So again, they might not be able to say like, hey, this is what you did with the funds. We watched you do here, 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 and here, because you did go through CoinJoin, right? So all they can say is, we watched you go into CoinJoin, and that's it. But like as you say, there's a whole other layer of real life on top of that, where they can pressure you, they can threaten you, they can do all sorts of stuff. If they know that you had bought Bitcoin initially.
absolutely. I think it's fascinating to hear your perspective on this stuff, because the way that you personally use Bitcoin and the technology that Samourai Wallet kind of caters to is a different, maybe less mainstream at this point in time, type of user, right? Like, imagine the casual users are buying through a regulated exchange, providing KYC information, and maybe either just sitting on those coins as an investment. You all have kind of a slogan, or at least mantra, that you've thrown around, Bitcoin for the streets. I like that a lot. Tell us more about what that means, and as much as you're willing to share, kind of about how you use Bitcoin personally.
Sure. So Bitcoin for the Streets was a sort of response to the heavy kind of narrative shift that we noticed around the end of last year to, I don't know, I call them compliance bros, and they're the types that come around and they're like, oh, they're wearing suits, and they go, we all have to get online, we all have to grow up now as an industry, we got to play ball. I don't like that. That's what I didn't get into this for that. So Bitcoin for the Streets is the antidote to that kind of compliance bro thing. This is the software that we're creating and that we've created needs to work for people on the ground, in the gutters, in cigarettes, black market cigarettes. I don't know if your area has something like that.
I'm not
but
a
my
big
area
area,
does.
I'm not sure, but
Right.
LA's a big place.
My area does, and to me, that's the streets. You know, that gray market area is the streets, and the gray market is the largest market in the world, right? Cash is the largest market in the world, and we want to just take a little percentage, and we just want to come in with our little Bitcoin wallet and say, hey, we are the new cash, and I'm not talking paper cash, right? I'm not talking buying coffees on the blockchain or anything like that. I'm talking about the freedom and flexibility and privacy of cold hard cash. That's what we want Bitcoin to be. So that's what Bitcoin for the streets is. And as far as how I use it, so I've been living off Bitcoin since 2000, a little bit before we started Samourai. That was 2014, I think. And it's an interesting experience.
That sounds like an interesting experience. Like when you say living off of it, define that. Like, is that full blown sort of no fiat, no bank accounts, or is it just kind of like spend with Bitcoin as much as possible?
No, that's no fiat, but no bank account. I still deal with cash. For example, like when I need to pay rent, they don't take Bitcoin. So I have to find someone. Yeah, I have to find someone to sell to, and then so I'll sell my Bitcoin for cash, and then I'll pay my rent with cash. It's pretty. I mean, it's not that like it's difficult because how small of a market it is still, and finding people you can trade with and who are good traders and stuff like that. That might be a little difficult right now, but overall, it's not that much different to living on cash. So if any of you are familiar, like, you know, if you have a mattress with some cash under it, it's kind of like that.
I think it's really cool too. There's that phrase, skin in the game of, you know, Nassim Taleb, and I think there are a lot of people out there who, you know, talk about Bitcoin quite a bit, but the amount that you're willing to really invest in it personally, even of your savings as an investment, or in your time and energy and, you know, kind of making it your money as you have, that really, I think, speaks volumes and is a lot more powerful than just talk. So it's
You have to eat your
a really
dog
cool,
food.
unique perspective to get.
Yeah, you have to eat your own dog food. That's super important. And that we saw that really early on. That's kind of why we started building Samourai. Was a lot of these wallets, like I said earlier, they started taking out features, taking out functionality that if you actually use Bitcoin every day, you're thinking like, what is wrong with you people? Like, you're really making this way more difficult for users. Well, they didn't realize that because they stopped using their products and they stopped using Bitcoin, or they never even really used Bitcoin, so they didn't know. They had no idea that the functionality they were pulling out or putting in, you know, was doing something very detrimental for users. So we always want to make sure we're using our software, and that's a huge thing. And we by living off Bitcoin, it's not just me. It's actually most of the Samourais. I mean, we're a team of 8, I want to say now. And I would say most of us are entirely on Bitcoin.
And no fiat involved, like in terms of company operations day to day, that's all Bitcoin.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. We barely even deal with cash with the company. So if we can pay with Bitcoin, then we're likely not using whatever service it is.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, to have been so all aboard Bitcoin for so long is not something many people in the space can say, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of stuff.
It's been a wild
Lots of changes. It's been a wild ride. But you know, we're very excited still, as we were day one when we got into Bitcoin. We still see the same potential. We still see the same possibilities. So I think that we'll be here for a while.
One thing that I've seen on Twitter recently and throughout the Bitcoin community is this rift that seems to be perhaps starting to form between people who encourage just hodling and people who encourage spending. Do you see that same rift? And if so, kind of where do you find yourself on that spectrum? It sounds like you're, I mean, I suppose it's both if you're really like all aboard, right? Because you are hodling.
Exactly, yeah,
your cash and your
precisely it. It's just like anything else. You try to save what you can and you spend what you have to, right? Like, the same with Bitcoin. If you're living off Bitcoin, you will have to spend it. There's no doubt about it, because you need to eat. So I don't like the guys who are always talking about never spending, because that doesn't make any sense. You know, and that's one, how you end up with products that are kind of, you know, painful to use, is because you have people who don't actually use it, who don't spend it. So I don't know all about that, but I also I'm alert. I save. If I didn't have Bitcoin in my life, I would be stacking fiat, but I'm not. I'm stacking sats, right? So yeah, I don't think that there's a big division between the two. I think there's just a big division currently between the user bases of the two, and I think it's actually going to become a bigger problem later on. I see the hodlers, I see that group, and I use the term loosely, that group who are just completely about the investment side of things. They're looking at Bitcoin as an investment angle. They're looking at it as a way to pad out the 401k. They're looking at it from that perspective, and I just can't look at it from there. To me, I need Bitcoin to be the best cash we can have, and that's a fundamental difference from the 401k guy, the compliance pros, or the pure hodlers. And I think in the next year or two, we're going to start to see even more tensions between the two groups, because the 401k guys are going to perceive the privacy guys as impacting or being a detriment on their potential upside of investment of this investment. So I think they'll see the privacy guys as risking their investment in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
so
like
I think we're just getting started.
I see, yeah. So like if privacy were integrated more into Bitcoin, or if privacy tech on top of Bitcoin became capable enough, then that would be less palatable potentially to regulators, to banks, to people who would approve ETFs and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and that to us, or to me, that's even more attractive. The less you can palate it, the better, from a government and regular perspective. But for them, that is what legitimizes this asset, and that is what's going to take them to the moon, this force over there. So I think, yeah, you're going to see the tensions arise between those two camps. But like for actual just users, I think we all need to save. You know, savings is the foundation of everything. How are you supposed to build anything if you don't have any capital to save them, right? So you should always be saving, but in turn, you also have to realize that this isn't just something to hide away and forget about, and then come back 10 years and now you're a multi-billionaire, right? That's not going to happen. I'm sorry to tell you this. It's not how it works. You need to build the economy out. You need to build the system out, and the only way that you can build the system out is by actually using it.
Interesting. Do you think that we would ever see do you think the next contentious fork drama in Bitcoin would be around privacy? There are a lot of rumblings about should we integrate the confidential transactions, certain types of privacy enhancements in layer 1, like on the base layer of Bitcoin. And if so, potentially that would require a hard fork. Do you think that will become a big deal? Is that kind of the next block size debate, so to speak?
I think so. I think it's going to be privacy related, yes. I think the privacy wars are just getting started. So yeah, I do. I don't know at what level. I don't know if it's going to be at the protocol level. I don't know if there's anyone who's coding for Bitcoin on Bitcoin Core or any of the other implementations. I don't know that anyone's actually doing anything privacy related at the protocol. And I don't know that even if they were, it would be something that sails right through, as you alluded to. So yeah, I think it could well be the next
Yeah, and I guess we've already started to see what may be foreshadowing of a coming, conflict, as you're describing, in some exchanges being hostile towards coins with a certain history. So if they can observe that coins were coin-joined or mixed with other types of transactions, then not letting them be deposited or
theoretically, we haven't seen that yet. What we have seen is exchanges refusing to accept deposits from coins that have been associated from past scams, but that had nothing to do. We haven't seen any exchange reject a coin just for a coin.
Yeah, that's actually a really important distinction. Like, I kind of forgot that nuance until I think you and I chatted about this a little bit before, and in my head, like when I read the articles about it, my takeaway was, oh, the exchanges saw that this person was doing coin join, and therefore they're not letting them take their money out or do business with the exchange anymore, kind of done deal. But you're saying it's not so much that, it's more that the coins were in close proximity to other coins during that process that were part of scams. Is that
correct? Yeah. So one of the largest Ponzi scheme in crypto history recently happened. It was called Plus Token, and you can go onto our website oxtresearch.com and download a free report on that we put together on just how that scam worked, and we travel with those coins as they enter Wasabi wallet mixer, and then we follow them through the mixer and on the out as they come out of the mixer. So obviously the mixing was pathetic if we're able to do that. So I recommend you look at that report just so you have an understanding of how large the scam was. It's enormous. And two, so the scammers were trying to mix their coins through Wasabi Wallet. And a Wasabi Wallet user, completely innocent user, not anything to do with the Plus Token guys, went to deposit his own coins on one of the exchanges. I think it was Binance, but this has happened like 4 times now, so it could be various exchanges. And the exchange flagged those coins and locked his account until he could explain himself, right? Now, we did digging really into the stuff, trying to figure out, because we do coin join, we don't want our users getting flagged, we have to understand what's going on. When you look at the mixes carefully, what you end up finding is that all these innocent users are mixing directly with the scam coins in the same exact mix. And then when they go to spend, there's not even a hop of separation between them. So you're literally in a transaction with the largest scam in crypto. Yeah, the exchanges are they're gonna notice that. It's like super easy to see. There is no obfuscation. You're not even trying, to put distance between you and this thing. Now, I don't know why Wasabi made the architectural choices that they did to make this possible. It's not possible in Whirlpool. So to me, it's unfortunate because it puts a cloud over the entire coin joining thing, because that's what the press reported, right? The press reported, hey, coin join, exchange is banning it, no good. Well, no, that's not how it happened. Exchanges have to look at the source of these funds. They all contract with some shady chain analysis companies that give them the same information. That's why they all share the same addresses that are flagged, and that's why all these people have gotten their accounts closed, is because they're just using a really poor quality mixer.
When I think about the type of problem there, like what makes me optimistic about the coming, potential conflict between exchanges and users is that there's technology being built to hopefully help the users work around that. In Samourai, there are transactions like Ricochet, where you can kind of put some distance between yourself and in certain jurisdictions are pressured not to eventually do business with, if KYC or if CoinJoin itself becomes more of a target eventually, then maybe if you can't do it on this US regulated exchange, then that's some incentive for someone to move somewhere else and open an exchange remotely.
Yeah, you gotta be flexible. You gotta be flexible. And that's just living on the streets, right? That's Bitcoin for the streets. You gotta move around, you gotta see, you gotta and I don't mean physically, right? I'm not saying you have to move locations, jurisdictions, but you have to be aware of the landscape, right? And you have to be aware of your options, your plan B. What if plan A doesn't work? What if this exchange goes down? Okay, I'm gonna go here. For example, local Bitcoins was the place to buy and sell Bitcoin without KYC up until this year, or last year, up until last year. We saw that coming. We had warning that they were going to go full KYC, and because we knew that, and we took we took steps to create contacts with traders on there who we have been using for years to say, hey, once this goes full KYC, let's just work off the platform. You and I, we'll chat on Signal, and we'll make our trades happen, right? So you build those relationships up, but you just always have to be looking one step, two steps ahead, because things can change so quickly. Just one point that you mentioned about coin joins and maybe them banning coin joins, this and that, I find that very, very unlikely. But even if they did do that, we could still fold them, because people are still, coin joins exist today that don't look like coin joins. You guys at that in the meetup, if you have a Samourai wallet on your phone, you guys can do in-person coin joins with each other using the feature called Cahoots or Stonewall X2. And these are coin joins, but you can't tell that they're coin joins. They look like normal transactions. So, it's always like a cat and mouse game with the regulators and stuff like that. But we can move so much quicker, right?
Yeah,
with ricochet.
Even the fact that you all were focused on this and working on this stuff back at the time when most people were so focused on the block size debate and on those kind of other issues of the day, I think kind of speaks to what you're describing, that mentality of staying one step ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was just gonna say, with Ricochet, it's such a cool feature because it's so simple in its design. It's just adding when you do a Ricochet, you say, okay, I want to send Steven 1 Bitcoin, or I want to send some exchange 1 Bitcoin. But before my wallet sends that 1 Bitcoin, it sends to 5 different addresses beforehand. It hops between 5 different addresses, and you can have it so it hops between those averages between different blocks even. So that's called stagger Ricochet. And that adds distance to the transaction from the origination to the destination. That distance of 5 hops is what we've researched to kind of be a good number where chain analysis kind of look back, how many times they look back. If we've discovered that they're looking back 10 hops, then we just have to change the number from 5 to 10. But the amount of computing that they have to do to go from 5 hops to 10 hops is enormous. So, we can make that type of change by changing a variable. They have to add all sorts of processing power.
Yeah, so it'll probably be this game of cat and mouse for a while, but yeah. To your point, there's kind of this asymmetry, and right now the advantage is on the individuals. I think Bitcoin inherently, right, and the software just kind of
Absolutely
restores power to the individuals that were previously relegated to centralized institutions.
Yep, exactly.
Very cool. I mean, personally, I would rather not trust regulators. I would rather just fight these battles with technology, and I think that you have been, you and the rest of the team have been pioneering that for years, and so I am happy to have you all in Bitcoin doing what you're doing. You've also been very generous with your time, speaking to us tonight, and with everything that you do just in Bitcoin online, on Twitter, on Telegram groups. Very much appreciated, and everybody give a hand for Samourai.